Aloha, and here we are, 2018. A lot of people have been contacting me directly or indirectly requesting that I do more videos. There is a lot of stuff that's been going on in the last year or two that I definitely feel worthy of commenting on, and I plan to do that more in 2018. I do have a Patreon account, which some of you are aware of. I opened that up last summer. I haven't really promoted it. I haven't really made too many videos since then, so I'm very happy with how many people have come to it without hardly any promotion, really. And thank you very, very much from the bottom of my heart to the people who are supporting. Now, this video, I put this video out because here's Iran, once again in the crosshairs. Keep in mind that Syria was always a stepping stone to Iran, which was a stepping stone to World War III. They didn't get exactly everything they wanted in Syria. They certainly didn't get Bashar al-Assad out. That country has been able to hold it together, despite the fact that it's in desperate circumstances, and therefore they were not allowed or able to move on to Iran. So now they're having to do it directly, and of course we see this game being played, this Ukraine color revolution type game being played, jacking up all of the protests and making it something that it's not. But we're still playing a very dangerous game here. One of the things I'm going to say real quickly is that there's a growing number of people who are convinced there are no nuclear weapons. What I have to say to you is, for those of you who are saying, you buying into that and all this sort of stuff. Listen, my mind is open about all sorts of stuff, whether it's flat earth or whether it's no nuclear weapons or any number of very fascinating things. But at the end of the day, I always try and break down what I'm going to focus my attention on just how much it matters. Even if the earth is flat, even if we have no nuclear weapons, we are still playing a very dangerous game. Even with conventional weapons, a third world war would be extremely deadly and dangerous and cause immense suffering. So we should not be accepting a third world war, regardless of whether we have nukes or not. And I am not convinced by any stretch there are not nukes. And having been to Hiroshima and Nagasaki and met survivors of these two bombings and talking with them personally, I'm even less convinced of the evidence, although I'm not saying that I'm close to it, but at the end of the day, you people who keep touting, you must accept flat earth, you must accept no nukes, I don't think you're thinking straight, honestly. I mean, really, is it more about you being right than actually making this world a better place? Because it seems to me that's what it is. Now, I'm not going to sit here and get on the campaign for flat earth or no nukes. I'm going to get on the campaign for us being sensible and doing what we can to prevent a third world war, no matter what the context of it is. If you don't understand that, whatever. If you want to go ahead and post your stuff, go ahead. But I would argue that you should be supplying evidence and then trying to win people over in a respectful way, and also acknowledging that while we may disagree on this issue, more important issues we are in agreement in. When people don't acknowledge that kind of stuff, then that really makes me question how serious you are and what kind of integrity or lack thereof you have. So anyway, I made this video because it ties into Iran and also Palestine. We see with this move, Trump's move to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv, the embassy, very provocative. We could have always anticipated what would happen from that. I'm still baffled that people are playing this game, Alex Jones most notably among them, although that doesn't surprise me. But I mean, I'm just so surprised. Some very good friends of mine, people I really respect, whose views I consider to be very intelligent on so many different levels, still don't seem to understand that the Jewish bankers made it very clear that they saved Donald Trump from $1 billion in personal debt.
He knew he was in big trouble. I think he borrowed more than most other prudent real estate people. He had extended himself to the Trump shuttle, to a yacht, to a helicopter, and to a lot of things which weren't generating any cash flow, and he had to support his lifestyle. So he was in trouble.
Does anybody else want to bid? $190,000, we're going to sell it?
When the economy and the real estate market plummeted in 1990, attorney Alan Pomerantz says Trump owed $4 billion to his debtors, including that $1 billion for which he was personally responsible.
Because he personally guaranteed so much debt, the leverage shifted dramatically over to the banks, because it was no longer an issue of a bank and a piece of real estate. It was a bank and Donald Trump's actual survival.
Trump owed money all over town, to 72 banks in all. Pomerantz represented them as a group.
How close was he to going personally bankrupt?
Very.
Trump makes a point of saying he never went personally bankrupt. But there's a reason why the banks decided to keep Trump whole.
We made the decision that he would be worth more alive to us than dead. Dead meaning in bankruptcy. We don't want him to be in bankruptcy. We want him out in the world selling these assets for us.
So you wanted him alive because he was a salesman and could best sell his own properties.
That's correct. We kept him alive to help us.
I've known the president and I've known his family and his team for a long time. And there is no greater supporter of the Jewish people and the Jewish state than President Donald Trump. I think we should put that to rest.
Thank you very much. Very nice. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Are you seriously saying that Donald Trump is betraying the same bankers who saved his ass and are now crossing them openly? While he has his Jewish son-in-law, Jared Kushner, buddy-buddy with Netanyahu, as Trump is. I mean, I don't get this. I really don't get this. And what it really does, the other thing that it brings up is that many of you, including good friends who I really respect, many of you are still buying into the idea that these presidents and prime ministers and these congressmen and senators, that they make decisions. You really believe that? You really believe that Obama and Trump and Bush and Clinton and all of them, Reagan, all of them, you believe these people go into the Oval Office and formulate policy? You honestly don't think that they are being directed by advisors who surround them within the White House and other forms of government? You don't know that? I don't understand. They're all bought and paid for. Donald Trump is knowingly bought and paid for by virtue of the $1 billion that he was bailed out by the Jewish banksters. The idea that he's playing 3D chess by moving the embassy to Jerusalem, thereby causing more problems for Israel, and somehow proving that he's actually working against the powers that be. Wow. You're getting creative there. And I guess selling $300+ billion worth of weapons to Saudi Arabia, which is the biggest financier of ISIS and Al-Qaeda before it, undeniably. So I guess that's like 3D chess as well. And then when American sons and daughters get their heads chopped off or go off to some bloody conflict in which ISIS, Israeli Secret Intelligence Services, when we send our sons and daughters off to that shit, I guess you're going to excuse Donald Trump then too, when they use weapons that we sold to them. And even if they don't use those specific weapons, Saudi Arabia is the chief financier and backer of the Wahhabi, Takfiri, ISIS ideology, Al-Qaeda ideology. They are. If you don't know that, well, I don't know. Again, I don't understand. You're putting too much faith in the savior program, and now your savior is Trump. Before that, all these people who bought into Obama. Come on, man. Come on. I don't believe the U.S. president makes any decisions of any merit. Maybe he can decide whether a statue goes in a park, but that's about it. The idea that he would directly cross those that rule him in any way, any significant way, again, I'm blown away. So, getting back to this video. This video is about the Mavi Marmara, the attack on the Mavi Marmara. I was on that ship. Many of you who know me will know this story, but many of you won't know that story. My audience continues to grow, so many of you won't know much about my involvement in the Palestinian cause or my time on the ship, the Mavi Marmara, in which Israel killed 10 people, actually. It was 9, but one man was shot in the head, had a coma, was in a coma for several years, and finally succumbed. So there's 10 people that were murdered on that ship. I did this report about Israel's impunity because we need to keep paying attention to Israel's impunity. But I also bring up very important matters in this story, such as the USS Liberty, which we can never talk too much about. If you're not aware of the USS Liberty, you need to Google it, and you need to know it. Israel murdered 34 American sailors and nearly sunk the ship and killed everybody on board the Liberty. They just didn't quite succeed. Thank God for that, literally. And the USS Liberty is addressing this. Also JFK and what JFK was doing that was very antagonistic. Now that is the last president that truly did something against the orders of those in power. Clearly, he was tinkering. A lot of people, again, are going to say he wasn't threatening the Federal Reserve, whatever. I've read the arguments. I don't agree. He was tinkering with Federal Reserve notes by producing U.S. notes. And that was dangerous, extremely dangerous. He was dead within 6 months. He was also going He was also going to force inspections on Dimona, Israel's nuclear power plant. I get into all these things, and then the Samson option, of course. We need to know about the Samson option. If you don't know it, Google it. You need to understand it. So all of this stuff is why I put this back out. I produced this for Press TV a couple years back, but I never put it on my personal channel. So I wanted to do this update. I wanted to bring it up to date so that we can discuss this and understand that the agenda continues to hit Iran, because Iran is a stepping stone to World War III. Whether you love Iran or hate Iran, only the biggest of fools or the most corrupt, psychopathic, sociopathic individuals would support yet another aggression, which clearly is for Israel. How many of you Americans are going to send off more of your sons and daughters to fight in illegal, unjust, immoral wars in which the horrendousness that is occurring is so grotesque that 22 American service members a day continue to commit suicide long after they've returned and all the drugs have been doled out by the U.S. military, because that's basically what they're doing, giving them drugs to get them in a state of a stupor so that eventually they can just go off themselves or otherwise make themselves irrelevant. This is the reality. And if you want to send more American sons and daughters off to fight for Israel because you believe in some absolutely apocalyptic, ridiculous Bible version of reality which is being put out there by the powers that be so that we can create our own reality in line with what they want, which is a third world war, well, then we can do that. But thankfully, more and more people are waking up. So I hope you enjoy this video. It's 2 parts. This will be the first part. I'll do another little update before the second part and put that out shortly after. So I hope you enjoy it.
Imagine that a humanitarian relief ship delivering aid to over 800,000 children in an impoverished, war-torn land is attacked in international waters by elite military commandos who subsequently kill 9 aid workers. Where there's no need to imagine it, because it actually happened.
We're here at the Turkish court building where tensions are running very high. In this country, the case of the Mavi Marmara, a Turkish-American citizen, Furkan Doğan, was executed by the Israelis.
Certain events in history capture the imagination and attention of people in such a way that a paradigm shift occurs. In the case of the Israeli attack on the humanitarian aid ship Mavi Marmara, the myth of the Jewish state of Israel as an eternal victim was seriously compromised. On the one hand, you have Israel and its allies, which reads like a who's who in international banking, politics, and mainstream media. All of them essentially claiming that Israel is innocently defending itself from Muslim fanatic terrorists and their allies.
The Israelis, in my opinion, do not have the capability of stopping it. They can delay it. There will also be many, many side effects, all of them adverse, from an Israeli strike. But at the end of the day, if we don't get it done the way the administration's working on it now, which I totally agree with, then we ought to take them out.
Secretary Clinton.
Well, we're working hard. We're working hard.
As a passenger on the Mavi Marmara myself, I can tell you the Israeli military attacked a defenseless ship in international waters, and the result was 9 lives murdered, 6 of them executed. Speaking for everyone I spoke with on that ship, I can honestly tell you we were united by principles of justice and humanity. Most, if not all, felt compelled to join the mission out of a duty to the beleaguered people of Gaza who continue to endure a blockade of medieval proportions. Simply put, we see the blockade of Gaza as illegal, immoral, and unacceptable, especially when we realize that Gaza's population includes more than 800,000 children. That translates to 800,000 plus children being collectively punished, deprived of the most basic needs, and routinely bombarded by one of the most advanced military forces on the planet. All of this initially justified because their parents had the audacity to democratically elect Hamas into power, a government that can rightly be compared to Nelson Mandela's African National Congress before the end of apartheid, or Ireland's Irish Republican Army before the end of British rule, or even, for that matter, the founding fathers of America who were the terrorists of their day. Meet Furkan Doğan, an American citizen of Turkish ancestry who was born and raised in America. While virtually every Turkish citizen is aware of this young man, if you are an American or Western citizen, you are not likely to have ever heard of him. But make no mistake about it, the tragedy surrounding his demise is a carefully, willfully suppressed aspect of the attack on the Mavi Marmara, suppressed like so many other politically explosive facts, because it threatens to expose America's embarrassing and dangerous subservience to Israel. To put things in perspective, imagine Iran provably executed this American son. Ask yourself, how many Americans would be unaware of him if that were the case?
We're here on the Mavi Marmara, and on May 31st, 2010, when Israeli commandos raided this ship, I was actually a couple of decks below this one at the back of the ship. Furkan Doğan, an 18-year-old Turkish American citizen, was on this deck, and it was in this spot right here in which he met his fate. I'm holding the official autopsy report for Furkan, and what this report reveals is that he was shot a total of 5 times. The first 4 shots came from above him and behind him. Crucially, those shots came from distance. He was not in close quarters with whoever fired those bullets. One of those bullets went through his left foot. Another bullet entered his left leg and shattered his tibia and his fibula. Another bullet entered from his back, went through the thorax, through the left lung, shattered the 4th and 5th rib, and exited the front of his body. Another bullet entered the back of his head and exited the front of his head. Amazingly, 4 bullet shots, 1 a headshot, Furkan Doğan is still alive. He's lying down on the ground, and eyewitness reports verify this. He's on his back, alive, bleeding. But next is the Israeli commando who ends his life, and that commando comes and stands directly above him. And from point-blank range, that commando fires a shot to the face. It enters just below his right eye and exits right behind his left ear. We know that some of those that were shot that day were holding their hands out, no weapons, just their hands, and they were shot through the hands. And we also know from the United Nations Human Rights Council report that of the 9 persons killed that day, 6 of them were shot at point-blank range to the head. Ultimately, the conclusion of that council was that they were executed.
If you want to know what led to Furkan's execution, you need only look into his hands. The camcorder he is holding in this picture is the same camcorder he was aiming skywards towards Israeli commandos just before the first bullets entered his body. The footage from this camera would verify the circumstances of his murder, but like almost all photographic and video evidence shot that day, Israel has stolen all such footage, and subsequently, none of this damning evidence is likely to ever see the light of day.
These terrorists used knives, they used clubs, they used metal rods. They had only one goal: to kill and lynch IDF soldiers.
The problem for Israel was this: the people on board the Mavi Marmara were not going to lie down and submit to Israeli enforcement of an illegal, immoral, and unacceptable blockade. To the contrary, the passengers, including myself, decided it was necessary to defend the ship as if we were defending the children of Gaza themselves. Imagine it was your child continuously suffering from trauma and the denial of basic needs from such a blockade. What would you do to relieve your child's suffering then?
The blockade of Gaza is legal. It shows that the enforcement of the blockade last May was legal. And it shows that the Israeli soldiers who boarded the Marmara acted legally and in self-defense.
So who exactly was Israel defending itself from? Well, many of those shot and killed were journalists with cameras, like Surya, for instance. Surya was also shot from above and at distance. With a bullet entering his upper chest, traveling downward, it shattered his 8th rib, traversed his right lung, liver, and diaphragm before crashing into his pelvic bone.
I remember seeing you on the ship when you had already been shot and you were inside the cabin. You appeared to be in quite obvious shock. Can you tell me what was going through your mind at that time?
First of all, it's very hard to breathe, very hard to breathe. And one thing for sure, and you know that you are in a position between life and death. And some of my friends from IHA, the medical team, knew that, already in a very pale. My foot is very, very cold. And they start to saying, brother, say La ilaha illallah, because in our faith, when you're going to die, you have to say this shahada,
Perhaps Israel was defending itself from Dr. Hani Soliman, a genuinely fatherly man who strikes you far more as a gentle giant rather than a fanatical Jew-hating terrorist.
كان العدو الإسرائيلي يطلق الرصاص في كل اتجاه ومن كل الجهات بدليل على أن هناك أناس أصيبوا على الطرف الأيسر من السفينة وأناس آخرون أصيبوا على الطرف الأيمن من السفينة. هذا مع العلم أن السفينة سفينة كبيرة تحمل ما لا يقل عن 650 راكبا. في هذه الأثناء يسقط بقرب أخ من الأخوة الأتراك، يسقط يصاب في رأسه، فأحاول أنا وبعض الإخوة أن نسعفه وأن نحاول أن نسحبه إلى داخل السفينة، وإذ بطائرة هليكوبتر تطلق الرصاص علي وبواسطة بنادق ليزر. You are a military man, you know that laser. تصوب الرصاص علينا فأصابتني بالرجلين هنا وهنا، وعلى الأثر وقعت أرضا، وتراكض الإخوة ونقلوني إلى داخل السفينة.
أنا كنت حاط إيدي على السفينة على الشربة ولاحظ يعني في الزوارق سرعة الزوارق كيف وصلت، فمباشرة أصابتني رصاصة مطاطية في العين اليمنى فسقطت يعني مباشرة، يعني في رمشة عين يعني في لحظات قليلة جدا.
There are many truths to consider when we look at the violence perpetrated on the Mavi Marmara. Paramount among them, however, is the Israeli assertion that the attack was necessary for security reasons because, they say, weapons and terrorists were being transported to Gaza.
The organizers are well known for their ties to global jihad, Al-Qaeda, and Hamas.
If we are to seriously consider this claim, then we must ask, how is it possible that Israel, having intimate political relations with Turkey in 2010, could possibly be unaware of the fact that Turkish officials had thoroughly inspected the ship and verified that there were no weapons aboard? The simple answer to that question is that Israel knew full well that the ship was unarmed, but in order to justify its planned attack, a pretext would be required. What Israel did not count on was these same passengers, including myself, disarming 3 of Israel's best commandos and securing them inside of the ship. Indeed, the fate of these 3 Israeli sons was in the hands of the 100+ men Israel has attempted to label as terrorists. Truth be told, however, the Israelis were provided basic first aid for their non-life-threatening wounds, and ultimately they were all too humanely released.
The Israeli officials say that many on board the Mavi Marmara were in fact terrorists and they were only defending themselves. What is your response to that?
I guess if there were any terrorists on that boat, we should have those 3 commandos, being slaughtered by the activists, but they're not. Even we send it back to their friends.
الكل كان متضامن سلمي، وبالتالي لما تقول إسرائيل تدافع عن نفسها، من تدافع عن نفسها؟ من الأبرياء العزل المتضامنون الذين كانوا في السفينة هم سلميين، أرادوا أن يقوموا بهذه الخطوة، بهذا العمل لكسر الحصار المفروض على الشعب الفلسطيني في غزة منذ 2006 ومنذ 2007.
إن هذه الطائرات والبوارج والمدمرات التي حاصرت بها السفن وهذا الرصاص وهذا العدد من القتلى والجرحى، وتريد أن تلصق بنا صفة الإرهابيين في الوقت الذي نحن فيه مسالمون بطبيعتنا، ولم نحمل أي شيء يدل على الإرهاب سوى أصواتنا وحناجرنا وقبضات أيدينا وبعض المساعدات المتواضعة التي حملناها معنا لأهلنا في غزة فيما لو تمكنا من الوصول إليه.
Let us acknowledge the fact that violent resistance is a common theme in the human struggle against tyranny. And while violence should never be glorified, let us note the fact that the birth and rebirth of nations like South Africa, Ireland, and even the United States of America owe their liberation in large part to violent resistance or the threat of violent resistance. So Hamas, the African National Congress, the Irish Republican Army, and the Founding Fathers of America themselves have much more in common than many of us, especially in the West, would like to acknowledge. Viewing Gaza through the perspective of American patriots who resisted British tyranny, we can see the blockade of Gaza as a struggle between a powerful state imposing collective punishment on innocent men, women, and children, and the victims of said blockade who resist by any means necessary. Perhaps we should ask ourselves, is collective punishment and state-sponsored terrorism the best solution humanity has to offer in the 21st century?
هي سفينة مرمرة أو أسطول الحرية هي خطوة في سلسلة من الخطوات لكسر الحصار. كانت قبلها محاولات لكسر الحصار عن طريق البر وعن طريق القوافل، وكما تعلمون معبر رفح الذي يعتبر الشريان الوحيد لغزة كان مغلق منذ بداية الحصار، ومعبر رفح مغلق، وبالتالي كانت هناك محاولات ومبادرات من طرف اللجنة الدولية لكسر الحصار.
وإذا سمحت لي بمسألة ثانية، هي الصلاة المشتركة التي سبقت الإنزال بين المسلمين والمسيحيين واليهود الذين كانوا على الباخرة وقد وضعوا على صدرهم عبارة نحن يهود ولسنا صهاينة، وقد شاركوا الصلاة مع المسلمين ومع مطران القدس سيادة المطران القدس السابق إيلاريون كابوجي الذي يعيش في المنفى الآن، وقد أصر أن يذهب في كسر الحصار مرتين، المرة الأولى معي سنة 2009 والمرة الثانية في أسطول الحرية سنة 2010.
False accusations of being a terrorist hit very close at home indeed for me. In the aftermath of my experience on the Mavi Marmara, the Israeli Defense Forces issued a press release in which they stated that I was an operative of the Hamas terrorist organization, and apparently I was traveling to Gaza to form and train a commando unit for Hamas. False accusations aside, whether Israel is bombing civilians in Gaza with white phosphorus or literally executing humanitarian aid workers in international waters, Israel enjoys an immunity that is simply unparalleled. Now the question becomes, how is this possible? In order to answer that question, we really do need to go back to the 1960s when John F. Kennedy was president. Now, President Kennedy was insisting that the American Zionist Council, the precursor to the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee, otherwise known as AIPAC, be registered as a foreign agent. This would have seriously diminished the capacity of this lobby to affect American policy. Kennedy was also insisting that Dimona, Israel's nuclear power plant, be inspected by the United States. Unfortunately, we all know what happened to John F. Kennedy, and his replacement was President Lyndon Johnson. Now, Johnson played a critical role in a seminal event in American history, an event little known amongst most Americans, and it is that event that we need to go back to in order to understand what is happening today. And thus, we go back to a sunny day in June 1967.
The USS Liberty, America's most decorated Navy ship, is positioned in international waters just off the coast of Gaza, mere miles from where the Mavi Marmara will be attacked 43 years later. With the American flag flapping in the wind on a virtually cloudless day, Israeli planes fly at least 9 separate reconnaissance missions so close to the ship that Liberty crew members actually wave to the Israeli pilots. The Liberty is monitoring the 6-day war between Israel and its Arab neighbors, Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. The crew are at ease knowing that Israel, America's supposed ally, is watching over them. That calm is shattered, however, when unmarked, unidentified jets launch a vicious attack that will span over 1 hour and include more than 800 rounds of cannon fire, rockets, heavy bombs, and napalm. This highly coordinated attack includes jamming all of the Liberty's radio communications to the nearby 6th Fleet. This alone proves the attackers knew they were attacking a U.S. ship because these radio frequencies are tantamount to a signature of the American Navy. So while unknown jets strafe Liberty crew with machine gun fire and napalm, a damaged radio is heroically patched up and used to transmit a distress call to the 6th Fleet. Air defenses are immediately launched, and at this point, Liberty crew have transmitted nothing indicating who was attacking, as the crew themselves do not even know at this time. What happens next reveals treason at the level of the White House. Then Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara astoundingly recalls defenses of the ship, and President Lyndon Johnson affirms the recall. Never before or since has an American ship been refused defenses while under attack. But even more shocking is that Johnson ordered the commander of the 6th Fleet, Rear Admiral Lawrence Geis, to recall the Liberty's defenses because he did not want to, quote, embarrass America's ally, Israel, end of quote. This means Johnson and McNamara had knowledge of who was responsible for the attack before any Liberty transmissions had indicated it was Israel. In short, the President of the United States, Lyndon Johnson, is a traitor, as is Robert McNamara. Unbeknownst to the crew of the Liberty, their treasonous commander-in-chief recalls 3 attempts by the 6th Fleet to defend the ship and its crew, and no such defense will arrive for another 15 agonizing hours. Meanwhile, the unmarked Israeli jets are followed by 3 flagged and identified Israeli torpedo boats. Only now do the crew realize that Israel is attacking them. The torpedo boats proceed to fire thousands of armor-piercing rounds and 5 torpedoes at the ship, 1 torpedo hitting its mark and killing 25 sailors instantly. The Liberty now has a gaping 40-foot hole on her starboard side and begins listing badly as she takes on torrents of seawater. The captain orders the crew to prepare to abandon ship, and 3 life rafts are launched into the sea. In a blatant war crime, Israeli crew proceed to blow 2 of the life rafts out of the water and commandeer the 3rd. At this point, the full horror of this attack sets in as it becomes crystal clear. Israel's intent is to leave absolutely no survivors. There are many aspects of the attack on the Liberty worth greater attention. Most of all, the fact that American Phantom jets, armed with nuclear weapons, were launched towards Cairo in order to conduct a nuclear attack against Egypt, justified by way of the Israeli false flag attack on the Liberty, which of course was to be blamed on Egypt. The only problem was, the Liberty did not sink, and witnesses remained. Were this not the case, we might well have seen America conduct a nuclear attack that would have almost assuredly led to World War III. One thing is for sure, however. From the day of Israel's 1967 false flag attack against America, it became undeniably clear that Israel could commit any crime it wanted and nothing would be done about it. And to this day, international law remains nothing but a collection of pretty words with no substance and no consequence for the worst crimes imaginable.
I must say, I am not satisfied with the performance of International Criminal Court because so many violations of international law is going on worldwide. So many peoples are being killed. Crimes against humanity is being committed worldwide, but without any remedy.
In the next program, we will discuss the utter uselessness of international law in the face of impunity, Israel's hundreds of nuclear weapons, something known as the Samson option, and the logical consequences of impunity in the nuclear age.